Late September and early October in France. Summer dwindling and wilting into a trustingly chilly autumn. But what's the clay bridge that slides you between seasons? I'm Alexandra Lawton, and we're here at Roland-Garros.
The Roland-Garros Set.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Davenport, and you're listening to the Roland-Garros Set. Woohoo!
Day 5 at Roland-Garros, and I can't believe I'm saying these words out loud. It's sunny! And I'm genuinely regretting not bringing my sunglasses. I actually removed them from my bag not 2 days ago, sadly accepting that they were totally superfluous and that I'd not see the sun again for an aggressively long time. So I reckon the reason the sun's out is because I stopped willing it to come out. Rather egotistically. So you're welcome. Anyway, Djokovic is on today. Svitolina, Goner versus Zhang. And it's a big showdown in Pliskova and Muguruza. So definitely going to catch that. I'm now, however, on my way to meet a woman that's considered royalty in tennis. And I can't wait to introduce you. So I have the great pleasure of standing outside Court Susan Lenglen with none other than Lindsay Davenport. Lindsay, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Oh my gosh, so you've just been commentating Garbiñe Muguruza and Pliskova. She just won.
Garbiñe looks good. First of all, I'm always a little biased. Conchita Martinez is maybe one of my most favorite people in the sport. So, I've always been a Garbiñe fan, and watching her just this year get back with Conchita and kind of get back on track and look so motivated. She looks good here. Once she got through that first round, you never know. Everybody's tricky in the beginning. She looked much better today against Kristina Pliskova. She looks good, and she looks motivated and hopefully healthy, and I wouldn't bet against her.
No, for sure. I mean, look, I'm doing a subject today on women's tennis, so the women's game, and I'm so pleased actually that I'm talking to you. You're a former number one, and people describe you as the reluctant champion.
I guess so. So much about being on the top and about everything that goes with it was not stuff that I really liked. Playing tennis, oh my gosh, all day long, any court, with the balls. My husband and I go out there, we still battle and we still fight. And
Do you let him win?
Well, unfortunately, he's better than me. That's the problem. I know. And so all that part is great. I struggled more with people wanting my autograph or people
wanting these interviews.
No, it's great now. So much has changed. So, reluctant maybe. I mean, I enjoyed winning and I enjoyed that part of it. But some of the other stuff that went with it, is a little bit tough for some personalities. And some people are a little bit more shy, a little bit more insecure, a little bit more anxious about that stuff. So it was something that took me a little while to get used to. I never really mastered it. I never really felt comfortable with it, but I learned to manage it.
Well, the women's game today, there are not a lot of champions today, I would say, that are like you. There are a lot, and I didn't mean this pejoratively, they're a lot showier. Is that part of the game? Is that part of women's tennis today?
And I wonder if it's also this generation. And, so often you learn sometimes about...
But only specifically women.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at like their social media, like, I don't know. Maybe if I'd grown up in this generation, maybe I would post 100 photos of just myself. I don't think so, but it seems to be that's what they like to do. So, social media throws a whole different kind of curveball to these players this generation. A lot of them seem to go with the flow and adapt to it. But still, it's a tough era to play in. A lot of people judging. You hear a lot of the criticism because of your accessibility on these social media platforms.
Couples in tennis as well. What is it? Monfils and Azarenka? Is that what it is?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's that actually is much different from my age. I actually asked Jim Courier that the other day. I said, Jim, do you remember like a lot of couples between the men's and women's tour when we played? And he was like, oh God, no, like maybe one or two, but now it seems, I will say the men in this generation are much more accepting and much more encouraging of their female counterparts. I didn't necessarily feel that same support when I played, and I think that has been such a huge positive the last 10 plus years, just the support that the women get from the ATP players.
Well, that sort of brings me to mind. I mean, who's your role model back in the day?
My role model? Oh, that's...
Tell me it's Chrissy.
No, it's, it's funny. You know, I grew up watching, obviously, that generation in the 80s. I was born in 76. I grew up in the same town as Tracy Austin. She won when I was very young, but I went to the same coach as her, so I heard a lot about her. But honestly, it was like when Monica and Jennifer broke through, and keep in mind I'm the same age as Jennifer Capriati, but I could relate to how they played the game. Yeah. You know, I couldn't make 100 balls in a row like Chrissy could, or I couldn't serve and volley like Martina could. I didn't have a slice backhand like Steffi had. All of a sudden I saw Monica come through and she's bashing the balls up both sides. Jennifer, I grew up with, well, we're the same age, but she was much, much, much better than me at the age of 13. But I was like, yeah, that's how I play tennis. That's how I want to play.
So you say that maybe would you be able to win today?
Against...
Well, anyone in the women's...
Gosh, oh, no. I'm so out of shape and all that. But, you know, it gave me, once you see someone who plays like you, or you can kind of see yourself in them, then I think it gives you a lot more hope. So it took me a little longer, and until, like, the style of tennis changed for me to actually think, like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do okay.
So you've had quite a career at Garros, but what's the sort of the rose and the thorn? What are your best and what was your worst moment?
Oh, gosh. You know, this was always my most difficult tournament. I grew up in California. I did not step on a clay court till I was probably 11 years old.
That's still quite young, but just for an amateur.
Well, I mean, you start at 5 or 6, and, like, I would play one tournament a year in the juniors on clay, and that was the national clay courts in the United States. That was it. There's no clay courts in California. I never learned how to really move on it. I never learned the nuances of playing on clay. So I would come here. I would really train really hard in April and May, the clay court season, to get ready for the grass. And
what are we doing now? God, October.
So I would, yeah, exactly. So I would come to the French Open, but sometimes I wouldn't play a lead-in. Sometimes I'd play one. And that was it. I just, I'll give it my best shot. I never really put all my eggs in one basket and really tried to learn how to play on clay. I made a semifinal here, maybe a quarterfinal or two. But I always, and when I played, there was only 2 weeks until Wimbledon.
Yeah.
So I always had the grass in my mind here. And that's just the way I accepted it. Maybe if I could go back, maybe I should have had maybe a little bit more of an open mind about playing here.
Yeah. The mental block.
Maybe. I won my first major here in doubles. That was so exciting with my best friend, Mary Jo Fernandez. And I had some great moments here. But ultimately, I knew in my heart this was going to be impossible to achieve.
Not your thing.
Not my thing. I had some great clay quarters in my era. I had Steffi. It was going to be tough.
Oh, no, fair enough. I mean, we're all human, basically. But so with Serena Williams out, do you think people are going to be less interested in the women's game now she's gone?
Interesting. In the United States, you know, it was a big hit yesterday where we lost Serena, we lost Azarenka, we lost Coco Gauff.
Hang on, I'm British, yeah? Don't talk to me about a big hit for the US. Come on.
First rounders, right? I think for the players, I think that they don't fear Serena as much on clay as they do the other surfaces. So maybe not as big of impact to them, but you know,
you sparred with Venus. That was your spar.
Yeah, many times. It's changing. I think that so many players know. If you look at all the champions the last about 5 years, it's very open. You never know who catches fire during these 2 weeks of any major. I think a lot more players go into the majors believing that they have a chance to win than ever before.
I completely agree. I mean, but can I ask you a question? And look, it's a judgment thing. It's an opinion. We're not going to get hysterical. It's just an opinion. What do you prefer to watch, honestly? Men or women's tennis?
You know, it depends on the matchups a lot of times. I mean, I'm more of a women's tennis pundit. I cover more women's tennis. I do have to cover men's tennis as well. To me, it's all matchups. You can have an unbelievable women's match and you can have kind of a dud of a match depending on who's playing who. And the same goes for the men also. The other night I was put on Longland and watched an unbelievable match between Tsitsipas and Munar. 5 sets. The first 2 sets I thought, oh, this isn't really great. And it was amazing. And then sometimes you get these matchups where you have so much hope and it doesn't really pan out. So I try and go into commentating matches with an open mind. I mean, you got to be a little bit honest and a little bit realistic sometimes of the level that the players are playing at. I prefer either. It just really depends on kind of the play of the match and the pace of the match also.
Fair play. And also, your dad, I'm so sorry, has a brilliant name, Winky.
Yeah.
He was a professional volleyball player. Yeah. And did you ever, I mean, you're very tall. You're 6 foot plus, 6'2" plus.
So I'm almost 6'3". My dad's 6'8". So exactly. So came from a really, really tall family. Both of my parents actually played volleyball. And they tried a couple of different times to get me to play volleyball. Both my sisters who are older played volleyball. They both played in college in the United States. And I just kind of held my ground. My mom tried twice. She took me to team tryouts in the States. And I'm like, oh, Mom, you tricked me again. And, I loved it. I grew up around the sport. My parents worked in the sport. Like, I was always around volleyball. It's the sport I know the best compared to tennis. But there was something about it. And, my parents they are amazing people, but they were also incredibly smart. They knew their sports, and they knew nothing about tennis. Never tried to coach me, they'd always make sure I was happy with whichever coach I was working with, and that's all that they were really concerned about.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems like you went against the grain of the family, but I heard a story, Stanford University, you wanted to pursue academia, and you were basically turned away from Stanford for being too good at tennis. You just didn't have a chance.
So I was 15 playing in the 18 and under, the junior national championships. And I had just turned 15, and I had won the tournament. So I still had 2 more years of high school, and the college coaches all go to that. And afterwards was talking to the Stanford coach, and he made like a joke, but as an insecure 15-year-old, he's like, well, I hear you want to come to Stanford, but I'm not sure you're going to make it to Stanford. And he walks away, and I'm like looking at my mom, and she can see I'm about to cry.
I feel like he could have made that like more direct and more easy to stomach.
He's an amazing man. So then we walked away. My mom's like, no, Lindsay. He's saying, you've got 25, 26 months until you go to college. He's saying you're doing so well that you might be pro by then. And I'm, what are you talking about? Excuse me, I was 3 years away still. I'm like, what are you talking about? No chance. And even though that was a great indicator of pros in the United States and still is, I still didn't believe it, and I just won the tournament. That's how far I had to come.
The reluctant champion strikes again. My goodness. So just to wrap it all up, because I know you're probably exhausted after a whole day of commentating, but in terms of the women's game, in the men's, we've got the people that are firmly on their seats, basically. Your Federer, your Djokovic, your Nadal, Murray. But we don't see that in the women's game. Why?
It's a huge role reversal. When I played, we would get all sorts of grief. Oh, it's so predictable. It's always Steffi and Monica. It's always Chris and Martina. It's like there's no... And now, the last 10, 15 years, it's been like that on the men's. But I don't know why that is. The women's champions haven't been as consistent, except for Serena, when she's been dominating the sport. It's a lot more open. It's a lot more interesting. It was fascinating at the U.S. Open final. We have been so spoiled by these amazing players on the men's side of getting the highest level you've ever seen at a Grand Slam final. You think it can't be topped. And all of a sudden you had 2 players who knew this was their chance, Thiem and Zverev, and they couldn't play their best in their biggest match. Thiem obviously ends up winning. But it was fascinating to see. It made Rafa, Novak, and Roger look even greater, if that's possible, with all that pressure and how they can always get to that match and play close to their best time and time and time again. I actually, when New York was done, I sat back and said, if there was possible to gain even more respect for those 3, I did.
Oh, no, for sure. It's unbelievable tennis. They're from Mars, is that right?
Exactly.
I just wanted to know as well, there's a funny story about you not being allowed on a plane because of tennis rackets. I feel like you've got a really funny relationship with tennis, Lindsay.
You know what? I tried to... I have kind of like a rule. I don't like a lot of drama. Whatever. Just not...
Let's not get hysterical.
I tell my kids that all the time. Don't even start. I'm not doing the pouting crap and all that. So one year in Sydney, I played Martina Hingis in the final of Sydney. And, we were on the same flight then to Melbourne later that night. And I can't remember. Maybe she won the final in Sydney. I can't remember. And so we get on the plane. And she goes on, and I think I waited. I went to get some water or something, and I watched her get on, whatever, her rackets, everything. And then I go on, and the guy's like, oh, you can't take your rackets. So, are you joking? What do you mean? I just saw...
You know who I am.
No, it wasn't that, but I go, you can't let someone else on the plane and not let me on the rackets. He's like, you can't take those on. And then I don't want to get her in trouble, but I'm like, well, you've let other people on. So sure enough, so I said, okay, fine. So I took all my rackets out. I go, you can take my bag. And we got into a little argument. Keep in mind, this is 20 years ago. Before security tightened up before 9/11, before all this stuff. But yeah, I tried to hold my ground. But
To be fair, you're pretty powerful with a tennis racket, so if they were scared.
dude, you've got to let me at least take 2 or 3. You have to. I got to play the Australian Open, whether it was the next day or the day after.
You're ruining my career.
Exactly. I held it together pretty well. I think so, but I don't know.
It seems like no trouble. And I just want to wrap up. I mean, so Sophia Kenin, where she won today, she was really emotional, and she won Australia, and she's the hope for Garros, but she let the emotions get the better of her today. What do you think? Do you think she could still end with a chance?
I'm not sure on this surface. I think she might need it a little faster. It's heavy, it's clay, it's colder this year. Australia was really fast. It was really fast conditions, and that seemed to speed up her balls as well. But the one thing you can never discount with Sophia is she is a fighter. She knows how to win. She does not roll over. She is a very, very the toughest American we have, maybe except Serena. She fights for everything out there. I don't know if she's playing well enough either. I mean, she's coming off an 0-0 loss to Azarenka. She's had 2 3-setters. I don't know her mindset well enough to know if she can kind of put that out of her mind and get into gear. But she's so good. She's been underrated really her whole life, even in the juniors, and she was winning all the time. Will be interesting to see if she can kind of build that confidence on really not her favorite surface as the tournament goes on.
Okay. Well, Lindsay Davenport, that was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and I hope to bump into you around.
Anytime. I'm around.
What happened?
American fourth seed Sophia Kenin ran into a spot of bother before managing to limp into the third round at Roland-Garros with a 3-6, 6-3, 6-2 victory against Romanian Anna Bogdan. Kenin, the best American hope at Roland-Garros, along with last year's semi-finalist Amanda Anisimova, after Serena Williams withdrew with injury on Wednesday, was clearly struggling before eventually finding her range. She talked about how she manages her emotions before, during and after a match.
Before the match, I get quite emotional, sometimes crying. Luckily here, and there's been no tears, thank God. But, I'm obviously nervous. I want to do well. And then, during the match, I just try to put the emotions aside. I don't have time to think about my emotions. I got to play 1 point at a time. And, after, if I win, I'm happy. I'm going to take the victory. And if I lose, I'm crying. So far so good. I'm quite happy with the way I'm playing. These 2 matches have been quite tough, and I felt like I couldn't find my rhythm in both of them, and found a way at the end. So I'll take it.
The Roland-Garros Set.
Well, I am faced with 3 very strapping, very attractive young. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine.
And what's your name?
Jules.
Jules.
Vadim. And Luis.
And Luis. Hello, guys. Hello. You from Paris?
No, we are from Rouen.
You're from Rouen.
Yes, it's like 2 hours away from here.
Can I ask you a question? And you can be totally honest with me, okay? No judgment. I was wondering, do you prefer watching men's or women's tennis?
To be honest, I'm playing tennis since I have 5 years old, and because of Rafael Nadal. And I prefer watching men, but women is not that bad. It's not that bad too. No,
That's fair enough. Everyone can have their opinion.
that's my opinion, and maybe Louis.
Yeah, me, I love watching boys. I mean, it's more funny than the girls because the girls, they are all the same game, and sometimes it's boring. But yeah, I like watch women as well, but I prefer to watch boys. Yes.
Do you think that women should play 5 sets?
Yeah, I think. No. To be honest, I don't know. But
Well, no, then these guys would be like, oh, God, then it'll go on for longer.
yes.
2 sets, it's good. 3 sets maximum for them, it's good.
But I like to watch like Osaka. Osaka is a wonderful player. She just won a US Open.
Yeah.
That kind of player like Osaka, even Mladenovic is a good player.
Française.
Yeah, française. She's
Avec team.
avec team. She won. No,
So team's single, is he?
I think so, yeah.
you can go.
I'm just on the court and I'm with 2 spectators. Guys, who's your favourite female tennis player?
Favorite tennis player, female, I will say Azarenka.
Ah, okay. And are you enjoying Roland-Garros?
Yes, it's very special.
It's a very special time. Enjoy this tennis match, okay? Well, that's it from me at Roland-Garros. I can't believe we're already nearing the end of the first week. Absolutely astounding. So tomorrow I'll keep my sunglasses out of my handbag to ensure another day of sun. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry, I'm all over it. Join me tomorrow for day 6 on the Roland-Garros set. If you have any comments or stories that you'd like to share with us, please do get in contact at #Roland-Garros on Twitter, go to Facebook, or use our official Roland-Garros mobile app, or just get in contact directly with me. That's at Alexandra Lawton. Toodaloo.
The Roland-Garros Set.